Ladies and gentlemen, I seem to recall it was back in 1996 that I first attended the Keepers of the Quake banquet in the splendid setting of Blair Castle in Perthshire, when I was particularly touched and flattered to be inducted as an honorary member of your society. For most of us who measure time in hours, days and months, a quarter of a century is a long time. But for those of you in the Scotch whisky industry who count time to an altogether different beat of years, decades and centuries, it is simply long enough to mature a fine single malt. And now, more than ever, as this dreadful pandemic prevents us from coming together at events such as the Keeper's Banquet or the dinner I hosted for the Society at Dumfries House back in 2016, it is somehow reassuring to think of the spirit of Scotland gently maturing in casks, oblivious to the ebb and flow of world events, waiting patiently to be shared and enjoyed in happier days. It has been, I know, a long, hard winter in Scotland, but as the snow melts in the April sun and flows into the burns and rivers, we take comfort in the knowledge that today's rain is tomorrow's whisky. It is in that spirit of hope for the future that I wanted to address all keepers and masters of the Quake, and indeed all members of the extended Scotch whisky family around the world. At its heart, Scotch whisky is the simplest of creations, with just 3 natural ingredients: water, grain and yeast. Yet add the alchemy of human knowledge, skill, perseverance and time, and it becomes a product of infinite complexity, depth and significance. From grain to glass, Scotch whisky is in a very palpable sense woven into the very fabric of Scottish society and culture. Its roots run deep into the land, back beyond 1494, when Friar John Cawes ate bowls of malt with the first officially recorded evidence of distillation. More than 5 centuries later, Scotch whisky is firmly established as Scotland's premier export industry, taking the taste of Scotland to virtually every country in the world and generating wealth for communities the length and breadth of the country. With 130 whisky distilleries, Scotland has the largest concentration of distilling infrastructure and expertise of any country in the world. And the great beauty of Scotch whisky is that it is rooted in our rural communities, from the rugged coasts of the Western Isles to the lowlands, the hills of Speyside and the glens of the Highlands. From the fields of malting barley to the waters of our rivers, to our peatlands and forests, the sustainability of our environment and Scotch whisky go hand in hand. That is why I am so very pleased to see the industry as a whole addressing its responsibility to promote sustainability and the conservation of our natural resources. As we finally rebuild after the pandemic, Scotch whisky also has a vital role to play in the recovery of the hospitality and tourism sectors that are a part of the whisky industry's extended ecosystem and which create priceless economic opportunities for our young people for the future. Scotch whisky is about people, the men and women who make it, who promote it and sell it across the world, and of course those of us who share it in communal celebration or enjoy it in moments of solitary contemplation. And that is what the Keepers of the Quake represent as a society. All of you, ladies and gentlemen, the people who make great Scotch whisky and who make Scotch whisky great. Over its 5 centuries of often tumultuous history, Scotch whisky has not only survived, but has prospered. I have every confidence that the talent and commitment of this extraordinary industry and its people will also prosper in the future. And so, ladies and gentlemen, in the great Scottish tradition of raising a cup of kindness, and for that matter, our spirits during these difficult and often isolated days, it is to you, my fellow keepers and masters of the quaich, and indeed everyone who contributes to the unique and wonderful elixir that is Scotch whisky, that I offer this toast with a dram from my keeper's quaich. And my toast is to the keepers of the quaich and all in the Scotch whisky industry, at home and around the world. Slán